So we need to create our thumb joints. So we are going to go to our channels box here and we're going to make our model selectable. I'm going to go to edge mode, double click on this edge, and I'm going to go to deform cluster. So we're doing the same thing we did with our arm. We are now doing this with our thumb. So I'm just going to make 2 clusters here and then put my character back into template mode. I'm going to go to my create joint tool and press V to snap the joint to the corresponding cluster. And then I'm going to make my joints smaller by selecting them both and going into my channels and changing the radius to 0.2. I'm also going to show my local rotation axis. So as we can see, the local rotation axis for both of these is not what we want. We want the Z pointing up and the X pointing towards the next joint. So I am going to take the locator, put it in front. I'm going to select this joint and make sure in the attribute editor all the joint orients are 0, and they are. And then I'm going to select this joint and then this joint, and then go back to my aim constraints. And I've changed it up a little bit. So my aim vector is 1 in the X, but my up vector is also 1. So I'm going to hit apply. And that's not quite what we wanted. What we want, so we do have our X pointing perfectly. So the X is pointing towards the next joint, which is great. And then we have the Z pointing out. We do want the Z pointing up. So what I needed to actually do is move my up vector to 1 in the Y. And there we go. So now we have X pointing towards the mid thumb joint, the Y pointing to the inside, and the Z pointing up. That would have been really hard to just try and eyeball. So we wanted to use that aim constraint. So now I can delete the aim constraint. And now what I can do is I can transfer these integers. So Control X to cut, 0, Control V to paste. Control X to cut, type in 0, Control V to paste. And Control X to cut, type in 0, Control V to paste. And we'll just do that just to make sure. And here's what we're going to do. So we're going to parent this joint to this joint, and then we're going to use the RJT tool. And what that's going to do is that's going to basically move everything in the direction that we want it to be, so that it's now going to rotate properly. Now, the next thing we need to do is we are going to need to create another joint onto this. So this is where, let's make this selectable. This is where the joint tool can be very handy. So if you click on this joint, oopsie, we're back in joint mode. I'm going to press V and click right here. Now these 2 joints are really big, so we're going to make them small again. It's hard to see anything. See? 0.2 for the radius. There we go. And actually, let's put this back into template mode and go to attribute editor, see what's happening. And also, let's turn on our LRIs here. So we now have this joint perfectly pointing to this joint, and we're going to hit RJT, or you can go to skeleton, orient joint options box, and make sure orient joint to world is checked on and click orient. Uh-oh, well, something happened here, actually. Something that we don't want. So this joint right here, it switched. So we wanted this pointing up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to unparent this from this. And then I'm going to do the RJT tool again. All right, because I want my Z axis pointing up. And I know that seems weird, but I do. And then what I can do is now I can move this so that in my Z axis, so that the X is actually pointing towards this end joint. And then I'm going to parent, and then I'm going to RJT this. So it's really important that you actually keep all of your local rotation axes visible until you've oriented everything. So now let's show what I was talking about. So now if I hit select all my joints and hit E to rotate, you'll see that the blue here acts, it rotates in the way it's supposed to. That's how I wanted it to rotate. Now we still need one more joint. All right, so we need one more joint smack dab in the middle of this. So I'm actually going to unparent this and then duplicate this joint. I'm just going to move it in just a little bit so that it is pointing directly towards this joint, but it's also here. Let's make this visible. It's kind of in the meaty part of your thumb. Okay. All right, and we are going to parent this to this. There we go. And they should all be, select hierarchy, they should all be rotating properly. Ah, look at that, that's great. Okay, so these need to be named. So this is going to be bn underscore l underscore thumb a underscore 01. I'm going to copy the name and paste it, and this is going to be thumb B. Control V to paste, thumb C. And remember, it's Control C to copy. It's Control X to cut. It's Control C to copy. And this is going to be an end joint. It's going to be BE. All right, we've got all these fun joints. Let's make the local rotation axes invisible. We don't need them anymore. But what we do need is to select all of the beginning joints, all the A joints, and I'm opening it up in the outliner so you can see I just have the A joint selected. Shift select my wrist joint and hit P to parent. And then save. All right, so we now have our joints on our hand and our entire arm. So those are completely finished. We need to make an IK handle. Let's go to skeleton, create IK handle, make sure it's a rotate plane solver. And we're going to click on the shoulder and then click on the wrist. Shoulder and wrist, not the clavicle, not any of the finger joints, no, shoulder and wrist. And we're immediately going to name this, and this is going to be RP for rotate plane, underscore L for left, underscore arm, IK 01. All right, now we're going to mirror these. We've named everything. We want to mirror it. Let me save. So I'm going to select my clavicle joint and go to skeleton mirror joints. We are going to actually reset our settings. Mirror across in the YC. We want our mirror function to behave, behavior, underscore L underscore, replace with underscore R underscore, and mirror. And there we go. So let's save this before we start any controls. And then we are going to save the scene as version 3. Actually, we're going to call this arm controls version 1. Okay, so let's start by making some controls for our character. And so what we're going to start by doing is actually creating our IK main arm control here. And actually what we really need to do is save this as arm IKs. File save scene as, I'm going to save this as IKs. All right, so if you want to make IK handles, this is what we're going to do. We also need to actually name the effectors. So I'm going to go here and find my effector. There we go. EFF underscore L underscore arm IK or arm 01, right? This is the arm EFF. And then we can go over to this side and hit F. And we can find our effector and go EFF underscore R underscore arm 01. All right, very cool. Okay, so for our arm control IKs, this is what we're going to do. We are going to create actually a control that kind of looks like a giant joint. So I'm going to create two circles. One of these circles I'm going to rotate up, and then I'm going to create a third circle, and that one I'm going to rotate in the Z. And then I am going to freeze transformations, delete history, and center pivot for all of those circles, and then hit the PSP mail script. All right, so now that we have this, we can name it CC underscore L underscore arm 01. So this is our IK control. I am going to snap it to my wrist. All right. And once I have done that, I need to freeze transformations. Okay. And I want it to rotate the wrist and also move the wrist. So I'm going to click my wrist joint, and I'm going to click the LAT tool, which will orient this locator to my wrist. I'm going to then make the locator smaller. Let's make it 0.5. And it's already named, which is great. So with this selected, I'm going to, select my joint. Select the locator, select the joint, and constrain orient. Make sure maintain offset is unchecked. All right, so now we have the ability to, make sure you're selecting your locator and not your IK handle. All right, so this rotates, which is great. So with this selected, I'm going to shift select my control and hit P to parent. So now my control can move this, which is great. So then with the control selected, I'm going to actually over here control select the IK handle and for the left hand side. And then I'm going to go to constrain point options box, make sure it's unchecked, maintain offset is unchecked, and hit OK. So now I should be able to move this whole thing around, and I can. Great. Let's go to the other side and do the other side next. Okay. So I'm going to select my control and mirror it. So MRT to mirror it. I am going to search and replace names. Search for underscore L underscore, replace with underscore R underscore. I'm going to get rid of my locator. Make this a 1. And it looks like this does not have an IK handle on my right hand side, so I need to make one. So let me do that really fast first. So skeleton, create IK handle. So I'm going to click on my shoulder and then click on my wrist and then name it RP underscore R underscore arm IK01. And then what I'm going to do is go to my joint. I probably have 2 effectors here. Yeah, I do. So I'm going to copy the name here. Then I'm going to delete this duplicate. And then this is the effector I want. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Okay. So I'm going to select my wrist joint. I'm going to click my LAT tool. I'm going to then select my wrist locator. I'll make it smaller in a minute. It was really hard when I made it smaller to select it, so I'm just going to keep it kind of big for right now. And with it selected, I'm going to shift select my wrist and constrain orient. And then I am going to make sure, okay, that's all zeroed out. I'm going to select my locator again and then select my control and hit key to parent. Next thing that I am going to do is select my control and then select my IK handle and constrain point. So now I should be able to both move and rotate my controls, which is great. So let's save this as, version 2. And we're going to make an elbow control and a clavicle control in the next video.